Identity is the first and most fundamental need of the person. It's formed through social interaction and expressed both in the core of the individual, self or personal identity, and in the core of the communal culture, collective/social identity. Collective identity, awareness that members share the same social identity and recognition that they are members of the same group. There's a range of schools from different disciplines who focus on the formation of identity, but broadly speaking, we understand identity as something that is socially formed, that is through our interaction with each other and the environment. In this way, identity is dynamic, it's not static, it's constantly evolving. We also need to consider that there are two main types of identity: individual identity, or personal identity, and collective or social identity. Myers' human needs in conflict. This diagram depicts three basic human needs relevant to the analysis of conflict. One of which is identity, and Mayer identifies four needs within this construct of identity: meaning, community, intimacy, and autonomy. This presents an accessible way to think about identity, so let's take a look in more detail at Myers' work. Meaning. Establishing a purpose for one's life, existence, actions, and struggles. Sometimes pursuing a conflict is a great source of meaning for people. Meaning relates to people's need to find a purpose, and this is important because it can be challenging if people find their purpose in being in conflict. This is common when people are in conflict for long periods of time. For example, intra- or interstate conflicts that have spanned generations, where children have grown into adolescents and adults in a context where their community has become defined by conflict with another state or party. You can imagine it's difficult to find meaning or identity outside of that conflict, and the challenge of redefining themselves outside of that conflict can be incredible. Community. Community. This is the need to identify with a group or groups and to feel recognized. Think about the groups that you're in: work, family, social, professional, faith, communities that you might be a part of. This is a very adaptable part of our identity. Different groups will meet different basic needs or functions for us. Think about what do family groups help us achieve versus what do our work group help us to achieve. Intimacy. Wanting to be special, unique, and important to other people, family and friendship structure. Intimacy. This is more than just wanting to be part of a group or a community. This is wanting to be special, unique, or important to specific others beyond what we can get from a group or a group identity. Autonomy. Sense of independence, freedom, and individuality. Autonomy. This is our identity as a person with self-efficacy, with choice, with independence. We can make some deliberate change in our environment. Social identity theory. 1. Individuals strive to maintain a positive self-concept and social identity. 2. Membership in groups contribute to an individual's social identity. 3. Evaluation of one's own group is based on social comparison with other groups. 4. A positive social identity is based on favorable comparisons. Pressures to gain distinctiveness and to evaluate the in-group positively lead to intergroup discrimination in the in-group's favor. Identity and conflict. Identity differences are often seen to be a root cause of conflict, identity-based conflict. Collective identities often contribute to the escalation and intractability of a conflict. Conflicts create and transform identities in the waging of conflict. Most intractable conflicts, if not all of them, are defined in terms of social identity. Most frequent types of conflict relate to territory, as groups relate their identity to a specific country. Some conflicts cannot be effectively dealt with unless identity needs are addressed. When our need for a stable identity is not met, or we perceive a threat to our identity, this gives rise to identity conflict. In particular, the need to identify as part of a group can quickly escalate conflict or increase the intractability of conflict, as it gives rise to the othering of non-group member and a much more competitive, assertive or aggressive actions or behaviors. Think of the conflict behaviors between two groups of football fans in a stadium. During the day, these people might work in the same office, attend the same church, have kids at the same schools. But put them in team colors in front of an opposition and watch the escalation, the intractability, and the othering of that conflict behavior. Another important point about identity and conflict is that if identity is not being met, then the conflict that comes from that conflict behavior can transform and become part of that identity. Think back to the conflict parties where we had primary, secondary, interested parties. Someone might start out as an interested party, not involved but with an interest, then they transform into being an ally or a supporter of one side or another, and then a primary party directly involved in the conflict. Identity is a dynamic construct that develops over time through socialization. Think in that way about the radicalization of a marginalized youth. They transform from just interested parties to allies or sympathizers, then to actively recruited parties. Often due to a root cause of an identity deficit or conflict. If an analysis of a conflict finds that it is indeed identity-based, then the conflict can't be constructively transformed or resolved until we get to that level and acknowledge and address what those identity needs are. Mayer sums up the basic human need that we all have to preserve a sense of who we are and our place in the world.